Welcome to Merschman Seeds Kappa Joe. On this episode, see a first-hand look at the 2025 season during our post-harvest meeting with Ben Pieper, a Product Manager and Agronomist. Ben delivers a year-end review highlighting field insights, seasonal challenges, and takeaways that will help inform decisions moving forward.
There's a few new faces in here, but the majority of you guys know who I am. My name is Ben Pieper. I'm the Product Manager for Merschman's. We've been doing this meeting for the past 3 years, and this is kind of our year-end review. I've told the story a couple times, but Joe Merschman always told me that we needed a post-harvest meeting. John Rempe used to put a post-harvest meeting on back when they had the slides. They had to sit these slides on a projector, and it was pictures from the entire growing season reminding us how we got to where we are today from this past year. And the past couple of years I've done that, and it's not only a good reminder for me from what we went through, but it's a good reminder on all the stresses that we had and some of the things we need to think about for our agronomy plans for next year. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We talk about a lot of this similar topics, and some of these similar slides you will have seen on Cup of Joe if you're a regular watcher. It's a podcast that we have, a YouTube channel that we have. The reason I put this slide up is I'm going to talk about a high yield field that I did on my own personal acres a couple different times. So I'm going to be referencing this field that is behind myself, Joe, Lynn, and Dylan on a handful of slides here. So when I'm talking about the high yield field, this is the field that I'm going to be referencing. Lovely blurry slide. Okay. So this is the U.S. Drought Monitor. I believe it is from December of 2024. So this is the soil moisture that we had going into the 2025 growing season. You can see that we are in the abnormally dry or slightly dry category there. A lot of the state of Iowa was covered in D2. We were in D1. And that just means that we were going into the growing season a little bit dry. Rolling into the spring of the year, we had caught enough moisture. This is April 1st. Going into the year, we had enough moisture from the months of March to get us to the point where here we are in southeast Iowa. We were out of the drought monitor, and by the end of the year here in southeast Iowa, we were listed in the D1 moderate drought category. As we travel east, the drought had definitely progressed into the state of Illinois. So we were sitting better than our neighbors to the east for sure. So that was the last slide that I was just talking about right there. You can see that we are in that D1 drought category here in southeast Iowa. Our neighbors to the east were definitely drier than we were to finish the season out. This is West Point, Iowa, year-to-date observed precipitation forecast. This comes from Eric Snodgrass. He's one of the guys I listen to pretty religiously. You can see as this is obviously a January 1st start point. If you come into about this region, that would be about where our planting, the April 10th planting date was. So for the majority of the year until we got into July, we were running in a rain deficit. If you compare the end of the year to where we are as a historical average, we're running about 6.5 inches short of our average annual rainfall total. So this is a picture of our temperatures year to date. We're going to be coming back and referencing this, but this kind of goes to show you we have our average daytime highs, our average nighttime lows. What you can kind of see here, and the point of putting this slide on is to show that we had a handful of dates towards the middle to end of our growing season in that July timeframe where we had warmer overnight temps and warmer above average daytime highs. That's going to play into how our growing season definitely affected us. We have spring temps, summer temps. We're going to get back to those. When we look at this, I really wish this was clear. If we look at this, this is our GDU accumulation. Essentially, where this shows is we have this orange line, which is 2024, and then we have a green line, which is 2025. In 2024, we had a lot of heat accumulation in the month of June, and we basically kept on pace with it from that June time point on. But you could see from the right side of the slide, we were much above average for our GDU accumulation by the end of the year. Warm nights in days. So we have this July time frame. I'm going to reference this slide a little bit later as well, but this is the average number of warm nights that we have had. This is the month of July, and you can see here that we averaged on normal, we're running about 16 warm nights per night, and this year we had, in the month of July, we had 24 warm nights. And when they talk about warm nights, they're using 75% of the low and 25% of the high, and any time above 70 degree Fahrenheit is when they use that indicator of a warm night. We're just going to get to the pictures. Okay, so this is our year in review. These are a lot of the pictures that we were going to walk through and talk through from where we were at. So March 26th is the start of where we are rolling here. We had the ability to do some tillage in the late part of March. Moisture was adequate. We weren't running too wet or too dry. This is a picture of strip tilling down in Fort Madison. We did some Meristem FMC trials down in Fort Madison this year with the Merschman plot planter on the Merschman fertilizer ground. And this is basically where our year started. March 27th, we were doing stand establishment on seed production on seed wheat. And this is a little bit of a thinner stand here outside of town. And we were getting nice tiller counts, but we had a little bit thinner stands. Even in these thinner stands, we ended up with very, very high yielding wheat this year. April 10th, the flag dropped for a lot of growers that were being fairly aggressive. We had decent temperatures and an okay forecast to start shoving soybeans in the ground. So this is a picture of our family's operation. This is April 11th. We started on the 10th, and you can kind of see here between this picture and the next picture. One of the things that I like to really highlight and think about as we're planting soybeans on the 10th of April is we've got to be getting these beans put in the ground at a decent depth, corn too for that matter, but I really like when we were planting beans early that we're getting those beans stuck in the ground at 2 inches. Some of the things that I saw from this past year with the temperatures fluctuating, that when we get beans put in the ground, you're gonna get more even emergence when we get them closer to 2 inches than when we are at an inch, because the soil temp changes very drastically when we're at half an inch or 3/4 of an inch compared to 2 inches. So we get much more even emergence when we are pushing the beans in the ground. When we're that early, we're always worried about frost risk. So by putting them in the ground, it buys us an extra couple days, and that extra couple days can save us from frost concerns for sure. This is our spring temps. Look at how clear that is. That is awesome. So here we are right here in the 10th of April. I got a 50-degree mark right here in the green line, and we had nice temperatures running highs of 65. Obviously, by that time, we knew that we were forecasted to drop down into the mid-50s, but the forecast looked okay to go ahead and start planting. So there's a lot of reasons why guys were definitely pushing. This is a picture of us rocking and rolling and switching to corn. That's just showing that I was taking pictures when we were getting ready to go to corn. That's our Thrive 3D system, which helps put Xyway out, and you can see the foam underneath each individual marker there. That's a picture of our corn. That is our 2512C-30. It's a little nerdy, but when we were dumping corn into the planter, I saw how even all of the seed treatment was and how pretty the polymers were and how well the seed was planting. And you don't always get that, and that's something that we definitely strive for here at Merschman's, is to get that seed treatment exactly where it belongs and to get it to plant correctly. And I had to snap a picture because the seed just looks so nice going into the planter. By April 18th, so you figure April 14th, 15th planting time, by April 18th, we already had a sprout. The temperatures were going the right directions for us. By the 22nd of April, I snapped some pictures of our first planted corn, and what you can see right here is we have a seedling that is sprouted. We have our radicals and our roots going down. We have our coleoptile going north. That's the way we want things to look. But we also had some seedlings here on the right that were starting to hook. And the reason things were starting to hook, that was April 22nd. Look at the temperatures that happened closer to the 22nd, which would be right here. We had some temperatures that definitely dipped down, and we were experiencing cooler soil temps, and what that means is that the seedlings were trying to find warm weather, and it was warmer underneath the seed than it was on top of the seed, and that's one of the risks that we play when we plant corn seed early. So obviously that's going to make a difference on emergence and competition in between the seeds. So that's something we don't necessarily like to see. That's why we want to plant into warm, long windows, but Mother Nature doesn't always provide that. So a lot of the times if we can get a crop planted in April, we push to get the crop planted in April because it might be June, but these are some of the things that happen when we plant in front of cooler spells. Okay, April 23rd, this is one of our seed production fields in outside of West Point here. This is one of the prettiest fields of seed production wheat that we had. We are looking at wheat that is really starting to get some length to it. It's starting to joint. We have nice even emergence. Things are moving along very quickly. We had plenty of temp to push the wheat along at a fairly fast pace this year. By April 24th, we're starting to see corn emerge. That's more like what I like to see when we are getting a lot of even emergence. That's a corn plant that's planted at 2 1/4 inches deep. We're starting to see it spike. By the 25th, this is the first field of beans that was planted on the 10th of April. And we are getting, so 15 days later, the beans are starting to pop through the ground. And we are getting a nice little root system underneath these beans. And we're really rocking and rolling for the year. April 28th, we have our first set of true leaves popped. By April 29th, we had wheat heading out. This is another picture from the 29th. What we have here on the left-hand side is a meristem hopper throttle treated soybean compared to a neighbor's Bex or something else that was planted at that time. They were planted on the same day. Little bit different tillage. Obviously, you could see we were in strip till environment, and the neighbor was in like a VT environment. But what I really thought was impressive is that we definitely were further along in progression. We had our true leaves out, and the root system was immaculately larger, and you could definitely tell the difference between the two different systems. I give the meristem planter box treatment a lot of credit to pushing the soybean plant along and getting its root system established and getting it out of the ground. April 30th, we should have had a lot of our Merschman trial work done by this time, but we were working on getting some attachments put on our planter. So this is me and Dylan trying to get the planter rocking and rolling. This was day 1 attempt, and we didn't get her done on April 30th. By May 2nd, we could easily row corn. What I really like about this, so this would be meristem hopper throttle treated corn as well from the planter box solution. What I really like to see is these plants that are really ready to rock and roll. We have lots of soil colloids tied to the rhizosphere here, and it just shows a very healthy root system when we have the dirt attached to the soil like this. The corn plants are in the V1 stage here, and we have really nice even emergence, and things are going very well. One of the reasons that I pull and dig roots at this point in time is I really like to see at this age, and maybe even a little bit older, we can really see if we have compaction issues, because the roots should be pointed at this 45-degree angle. If there's any point in time that the roots come down and then flatten out, you know that you have a minor compaction layer in there when you have young roots like this that can't penetrate through that compaction. So when we have nice 45-degree points on these root systems, we know that we are in a compaction-free zone. Soybean plants are still moving along. This is that April 10th planted field. The root systems are very nice. Things are moving along very nicely. At this point in time, I started to notice the true leaves on these soybeans just seemed huge compared to what we normally see, and that's going to go into a little bit of the meristem conversation that happens later. May 5th, so we were talking about temperatures moving right along. By May 5th, we had anthesis starting, pollination starting in the wheat fields. This is the perfect time that we need to be applying our fungicides. So we apply Miravis Ace to our wheat fields for our heading fungicide. It's a requirement for our seed production acres, and it does a really nice job keeping the fields clean. It's usually worth 10 to 15 bushel an acre by making sure we don't have head scab. And the past handful of years that we've made that application, it's been a very nice addition to our yields and our seed quality of our wheat. May 12th is when we finally got the Merschman planter ready to rock and roll. Here you can see we were doing a meristem trial on one half and an FMC trial on the other. We have, this is the attachment that we were waiting on for the Merschman planter. We put Precision's FurrowJet on, so this has the ability to put in-furrow fungicide as well as starter fertilizer 3/4 of an inch off to the side and down in the center. The pink juice that you're seeing here is Upshift C. It is a starter that we use from the meristem portfolio, and it was definitely part of our trial work that we did this past year. This is Dylan doing a fantastic job keeping on the strip, even though the guidance wasn't working the way we wanted it to perfectly work last year. But this is the introduction to some of the high yield stuff that we worked on this past year. Okay, by May 12th, we're looking at corn at the V2 stage, still evaluating root systems, still evaluating that 45-degree drop in the root system, making sure we don't have compaction issues. We're evaluating stand establishment at this time as well. Things are looking phenomenal at this stage. May 14th, there weren't that many fields that were at a very weedy point, but there were a handful of fields that did not get burned down, put on, and this is one of those that I was driving by and I was talking to the customer that, hey, we should probably be getting some of these mare's tail under control. Obviously they did, and the field ended up turning out fine, but for the guys that did not get burned down, put on, the weeds did get fairly messy by the middle of May. This is a picture that I received from Jefferson County Grower Standard Practice. It kind of talks about the same things that we were alluding to with our May 10th planted beans. We got Grower Standard Practice on the left with the Max Stacks. That is the premium pale offered by Meristem, and you can see the differences in roots. You're probably talking twice the root system, plus we are probably half a stage ahead when it comes to maturity. This is another picture that I just had to take pictures of because the size of the true leaves, the size of the trifoliates coming out of these early planted soybeans that were enhanced by these pales that Meristem offers were absolutely incredible, because compared to the non-treated acre, we were seeing huge plants coming out of this system. Picture on the left is a picture Dylan snapped May 15th. The one on the right is one from my photo book. What I highlight on these two slides is the fact that we have unbelievable inoculation on these two soybean plants. What you can see here as you're going down through the side, these are all very nice nodules that are going on. We're getting ready to start fixing nitrogen for these soybean plants. Both pictures have very nice nodules, and what that's coming from is the planter box solution from Meristem has 3 different inoculants on it, and I think that a lot of the soybean acres need to be inoculated when we're in a high yield situation, because we're pumping a lot of nitrogen into these plants. So why wouldn't we want to give the soybean plant a little bit of extra help when it comes to providing nitrogen for the soybean plant itself? By the 23rd, we were side dressing. The corn was starting to look a little bit peaked on the 23rd. You can see here there's a little bit of a yellow tinge to it. That changed fairly quickly about 3 or 4 days after the side dress time frame happened. I don't know if it was from opening up the dirt, that's my assumption, or whether it was the nitrogen, but by opening up that dirt, we definitely had a little bit of rainfall that was causing the corn plant to get a little bit peaked. June 3rd, we were starting to get phone calls. The week before June 3rd and after that time frame, we were starting to see these yellow plants starting to show up in the fields, yellow to white plants. When we were driving down the road, they were sticking out like turds in punch bowls. This is rapid growth syndrome. So rapid growth syndrome happens when we have plenty of moisture and plenty of heat, and what we have is the corn plant is trying to unfurl out of its own out of its leaf sheaths, and it can't do that because it's growing so rapidly, and the plant essentially explodes out of its leaf sheath, and it doesn't have light interception. So without light interception, it's going to appear yellow or white because it hasn't gone through the photosynthesis process. The picture on the right shows a test plot down in Weaver, and you can kind of see right here to the point, it was definitely hybrid specific. Certain hybrids definitely showed more leaf flash than others, but that doesn't mean that it was causing problems or anything to that extent. Whether it be Corteva genetics, Bayer genetics, this is a field of channel corn. Nope. Next. This is a field of channel corn that was experiencing the same thing. But basically, where we are, what we're looking at is lots of heat during this time frame. So we were at June 3rd. That comes into this point in time right here. So the heat coming into June 3rd and the overnight temps, the above night temps plus the moisture that we had going into June 3rd and the overnight temps that we had and the above night temps that we had going into June 3rd allowed for rapid growth syndrome to happen in the cornfield. Some of the people that were calling in was wondering if it's refuge, if we were seeing refuge flash out in the fields, and I definitely don't think it was refuge flash because you can see the wrinkling from the whorls coming out of the leaves coming out of the whorl that caused that wrapping effect. June 3rd, we have some more beauty shots. We're still looking at root systems. We're looking at trifoliates. Things were definitely progressing along. I got photos from guys across the river. I had photos from people here locally that the beans just were putting absolutely massive trifoliates on. Things looked absolutely great. June 12th, we're looking at a cornfield here on the left-hand side that was probably in V10 time frame. This is our 2512C30, and you see these super wide leaves on this corn plant. Things are progressing the way we ought to be progressing, and we also have a wheat field that's getting ready to harvest on some of our hyper early wheat. June 16th, this picture is taken about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Dylan sprayed this the morning before that. This is something we see with the enlist fields when we have humidity above 75, 80% and temperatures above 80, 85 degrees. The beans have a tendency to get lazy, but they pop right back out of it. We don't see it every year. One of the reasons I just wanted to put it in the slide deck because by the next morning the beans look just fine, but we don't always have conditions like this that cause the soybeans to get a little bit lazy. We also were out looking at bean fields on June 16th, and there's a little bit of Phytophthora that was showing up in areas where water runs across the top of the soil and in lower lying areas of the fields. This is a good reason to get out and scout your soybean fields. This happened to be a soybean product that had a Phytophthora K gene, and when this field goes back into soybeans the next time, we're probably going to be looking for a 3A gene versus the K, just to make sure that we don't have Phytophthora issues moving forward. June 19th, we were looking at some cornfields. This happened to be a cornfield that had never seen sulfur fertilizer before, and you could see the very outside edge, that outside corn row, was much taller, much more robust, probably twice the size. It was catching some mineralization from the not being tilled up against the road ditches versus what was tilled obviously there on the left. Sulfur was a huge deal this year, and I firmly think guys need to be putting sulfur in their program if they are pushing for higher yields. So this was just a dramatic difference between the outside edge and the inside to see the mineralization that was definitely happening. One of the signs of sulfur deficiency is this yellowing and this striping in the upper canopy there. So definitely something to be looking for if you are if you're planning for next year and you were seeing things like this on your field. June 23rd was the start. There might have been a day or two ahead of this picture where guys started harvesting their hyper early wheat. We had a handful of growers this year. I think Dylan and I were talking yesterday. Our field averages for seed production wheat on our hyper earlies and our medium early wheat lines were probably in the mid 90s for all of our seed growers. So we had a really, really strong wheat yield this year. This is just a picture running through the field. 112 bushel per acre is what the live yield is there. But this is just proof that by June 23rd, you can be harvesting wheat. Our highest 2 yielding wheat fields this year in Lee County were 135 and like 132 bushel an acre. One grower pulled like 45 bushel an acre beans off of it, and the other grower was closer to 50. So this hyper early double crop soybean is definitely a potential for the acres that aren't the 250 bushel an acre ground on your lighter soil types. Definitely be thinking about wheat. Obviously we're past that point for this year, but for next year, we have a lot of growers that have a lot of success. And by planting these hyper early lines, we can get them off June. We can get the beans stuck in the ground. We usually catch a rain during that 4th of July fair time frame, and we can really, really raise nice high yielding double crop soybeans. This picture is from Knoxville, Iowa. It's not something that we saw here in Lee County in June, but it's something that we saw in July for sure. They had an abundance of rainfall. I believe this was like 5.5 or 6 inches of rain in 2 different days, like back to back behind each other. And what you're seeing here in this picture is the soybeans. The nodules on these soybean plants went aerobic or anaerobic, so they didn't have any oxygen. So basically they're not producing nitrogen for themselves. So when the nodules don't have the ability to have oxygen and produce nitrogen, you see these yellow flash on these soybeans, and it typically takes anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks for the nodulization to fire back up. But the grower was asking what's going on with these soybeans, and it just happened to be we had too much moisture. We saw a little bit of this in the later part of July this year with the rainfalls that we had here locally. This is the field. This is a field of Cherokees that was planted fairly early on. And Cherokees are a 2.9, which is a fairly early maturity group for us here. I did not get a picture the past couple of years. I got pictures of our first flowers, and I did not get those this past year. Because of summer solstice, we should start seeing flowers show up June 21st timeframe. We are obviously a week and a couple days after that in this individual picture, but we are already at R3 by July 3rd with a 2.9 planted early soybean. And what I mean by we are at R3, you can see in this slide deck here, we have a set of flowers right there. You could almost call that a full set of trifoliates coming out of the soybean, but we have pods that are developed on these lower nodes below that. I have a tendency to take out a tape measure and measure those as 3/16 of an inch. Some guys would disagree with that statement, but they like to see those pods just a little bit bigger before they pull the fungicide trigger. But these are definitely, in my opinion, ready to be applied with a fungicide if the R3 time frame is something that you're looking for. We start to see pod development at the lower portion of the plant here. I really think that if we have adequate soil moisture on fairly productive soil types, guys can get away with planting earlier soybeans if it fits for their harvest schedule. And these soybeans ended up yielding 80 plus bushel an acre across the scales, and we were very, very happy with how they did. Probably 15 bushel an acre better than that field has ever performed. By July 7th, we are looking at blistered corn. The tassels are definitely out. They've definitely pushed their pollen through. We're not quite to brown silk, like completely brown silk by this point, but things are definitely progressing. There's that 2512C30 that I was talking about with the wide leaves on it. We get to this point, and July 7th was the last slide. We're coming into the time frame of July 12th, 15th, 18th, 21st. From West Point and west, we got more rainfall than this, but from West Point and east, we got a little bit less. So this is kind of the average for our local growing area. You can see here we had 2.5, that's 5, plus another 2 would be 7 inches of rainfall in a week-long period. That definitely set us up for some of the disease that we saw later on in the season. we definitely had the right temperatures for that as well. So if we go back to that same time frame, we're looking at the, where am I at, July, yeah, right here. We're looking at temperatures definitely starting to increase. The purple line is 86 degrees. We know that is the max for our GDU accumulation. 50 or 70 for our lows is kind of our stress degree time frame. So we definitely see temperatures increasing, and it was getting us to the next slide, which starts to show our, this is, which gets us to our, this kind of goes back to our rapid growth just a little bit, but we are starting to see some of these tassel wrap things show up. Tassel wrap, I'd be remiss if I didn't put it in the slide deck that we had for this year. It definitely affected certain hybrids. You can kind of see what that tassel wrap looks like here. It's when the whorl doesn't unwrap around that tassel. It's because of a handful of different scenarios, but it's warm nights, lots of precipitation, and that corn plant is definitely trying to grow faster than what it's set out to do. These are a handful of corn cobs that we found when we started picking them in continuation, and we were a little bit worried about this when it happened at the time. Some of these fields that had these tassel wrap issues were some of the highest yielding fields that customers had seen. It seemed that the early planted corn was the most affected for our very, very local region. But when it comes to the end of the day, a lot of these issues did not poke their heads at harvest. When I talked about the high yielding field, these are 3 years on the left that were from the untreated acre and 4 years on the right. The ears on the left were already starting to dent. The ears on the right were still in milk by a fairly large margin. So I knew we were definitely doing something to build yield and reduce stress at that point. This is that same field of Cherokees by August 5th. You can definitely see, we're going to talk just a little bit, or the Merschman guys are going to talk a little bit about some of their late season applications when it comes to fungicide after my presentation. But what I really, really like to see with that late season application, you can see from about here to here, you can see that we're starting to put 4, 5, 6 pods per node on, which is irregular for a soybean plant to do. So we're really, really stacking the yield in very strong. During those applications, you can see the timing of those applications based on what the plant is telling us, and some of the things that they have going reduce stress. They add to the yield that we're looking at, and the Cherokees were looking awesome by the 5th. There's my high yield cornfield, August 8th. Southern rust is something that was very, very prominent this year. So by August 12th, we have some very, very nice southern rust pictures. This is a map from the Crop Protection Network showing the areas of southern rust. This is the end of the year photo. And what you're looking at is essentially the entire Midwest was hit with southern rust this year. There were some areas over in Illinois that were fairly dry that didn't experience this same southern rust, but where we had adequate moisture and overnight temperatures and moisture, southern rust was extremely prevalent. The reason for that being, you look at precipitation, we were approximately 6 inches above average for July moisture. We built into that by having above average rainfall in June. So there were many, many nights that were, there were many, many days that we had more than 5 hours of leaf wetness because of the amount and the frequency of the rainfall. We also had those warm nights like I was talking about in the beginning of the slide deck. So southern rust requires heat, and it requires 5 hours of leaf wetness per day. So we were looking at overnight warm temps, we were looking at daytime highs that were fairly warm, and we were looking at above average rainfall. And these are a few of the pictures that we picked up from the southern rust. So this slide right here on the left is a picture that had xyway down first and then a foliar pass on corn. We definitely have southern rust below the ear leaf in these pictures, and that's what you're looking at there in that picture. On the 12th, August 18th, this is some pictures from a corn on soybean field that did not have any foliar application. We had rust above the ear leaf. Here's a picture of that high yield cornfield that we were following all year long. This would have had 2 shots of fungicide, and there was virtually no disease on any of these leaves at this point in time frame. I have another field there on the right hand side that was corn following beans, and a super wet field. We had plenty of moisture and poor drainage situations. We were starting to lose nitrogen by the 18th of August. August 21st, this is a field of Kennedy's that was planted on the 10th of April. And what I'd like to highlight here is when we plant soybeans early, we have the ability to put on more nodes than what is traditional. So in a typical soybean plant, we stack somewhere between 18 and 19 nodes per plant on the main stem. When we plant early, we can get into that 23, 24, or 21, 22 nodes per plant. Each node is worth 3 to 3.5 bushel per acre. And what we have on these plants is somewhere between 23 and 25 nodes per plant. So we know we're set up for very high yielding soybean potential. I have a cross section of those same 3 plants. It kind of highlights the same thing that I was talking about with the Cherokees earlier. On this field of Kennedy's, you can see where we are starting to stack pods very prolifically in this area where the NKBS late season fungicide and the Revline PGR was applied, because we're seeing those 5, 6, 7 nodes per plant that are getting stacked on when that fungicide application happened. Avery gave me a couple different slides here for guys that were trying fungicide. They were trying to see not guys that traditionally use fungicide year after year. And what you can see here is, looks like it's raining out. What you can see here is the effect that fungicide had this past year. It was very, very beneficial to have these fungicide applications. There's another field where fungicide was applied on the left and right hand side, but not down the center of the field. In that high yielding field, I took a treated acre versus an untreated acre. We were looking on September 8th at 33% moisture versus 28% moisture. So where the fungicide and the high yield program was applied, we were 5 points of moisture wetter. Why is that important? Is because we're trying to keep the corn plant alive as long as possible. The longer growing season we have, the more fill we have, and the more fill we have, the more bushels we have at the end of the year. September 9th, this is the date that we shot this Cup of Joe episode. In this high yield corn plot, they had to put power poles in. So it's not very often that you get to go into a center of a field, drive your pickup down through it, and see exactly how your actual field looks. And when we drove down through here and we were looking, this is some of the greenest, healthiest looking corn that was in the county, in my opinion, at this time frame. And the reason that I say that is because a lot of the neighboring fields and the untreated acres were already dead in senesced. So this is in the exact same field in the unapplied acre versus the area that was applied, and you can see some of the ears that were hanging off this high yield cornfield. This is something that I wanted to bring to your guys' attention just a little bit. It's not something that we have in Lee County, but we have this very close to us. This is a field of red crown rot down in Hamel, Illinois. It is east of St. Louis by just a 20 minutes, 30 minutes east of St. Louis. We actually have red crown rot confirmed cases in northeast Missouri and western Illinois. What we went to in this field was a seed treatment. It's a seed treatment trial that Syngenta works on. And what we have on the left-hand side of the left picture is an untreated check. These are 2-row plots, replicated 5 times. And what you can see is the untreated check is dying of red crown rot. On the right-hand side is a new seed treatment that Syngenta is bringing out. We have this on a limited basis this year. So we are treating with this new Syngenta product called Victrato. And it's going to be something that will probably be in the book for all of our customers for next year. But one of the surprising and scary things about red crown rot is it literally rots the roots like so fast. Like you can just go through the field and pick up soybean plants and you're left with essentially rootless soybean plants. It's like sudden death on steroids. One of the telltale signs of red crown rot, the reason it has its name, is you get these red pustules on right at the soil line. So if you're scouting your field and it looks like sudden death, this is something that you guys should definitely be keeping an eye out on. If it's all around us, we probably have it in the local area, but it has not been confirmed in Iowa yet. You can even see in these pictures, this obviously wasn't taken on September 9th because the foliage is that green. This is a picture I got from Champaign earlier in the year. But even at this stage, you can see the root rot that's happening, and the beans are dying very rapidly. The first picture of my moisture tests were on September 8th. So by September 16th, we all know how fast the dry down happened this year. We went from 33% on the treated acre to 23%, and 28% on the untreated acre to 18%. So in 7 or 8 days, we dried down 10 points of moisture, which, again, we're trying to extend that growing season. We're trying to extend that corn crop's life so we can get as much fill as we possibly can into it. With that fast of a shutdown, we probably were giving up a little bit of yield. October 21st, this is some of the trial work that we did down in Fort Madison. What you're looking at on the left-hand picture is a Fusarium crown rot, but as you can tell by the pink and the rotted out pith. That is on an untreated acre, and on the right-hand side, probably a couple rows over, is a Xyway treated acre. So what you're looking at there is Xyway is a in-furrow fungicide that prevents crown rot and stalk rot. We could definitely see it when Dylan and I were harvesting, going through the field. You could see the difference between the corn that was standing perfect to the stuff that was starting to lean a little bit. The Xyway acre was definitely standing better this past year. And the ear on the left is that Xyway treated corn, and the ear on the right is the untreated check next to it. So I'm going to tee up some of our meristem trial work with this. This is last year. 7 out of the top 18 Iowa yield winners were using a full meristem program or some version of the meristem program. And we have an actual customer that performed extremely well this year using the meristem program. He's from Lake City, Iowa, and I just wanted to highlight he had Merschman's 2512C30 on his strip till ground was 317 bushel an acre. He won the state of Iowa with that yield that he had, and he is using a lot of the meristem program that's going to be talked about next. This is a field that we had this past year. On the right-hand side, you can see we had a fungicide late season, so the corn was in full dent. Basically, the applicator was leaving my field. He had enough left in the tank. I was not at full dent yet. I was at pre-dent, so milk just barely starting to dent. And this field did not have a fungicide applied to it at all. And because there was enough left in the tank, he went ahead and did 90 feet across the field. And you can see when I did the climate regional analysis, where he applied was 257, and the next 90 feet or 120 feet, to be fair to the check, was 241. So we got a 16 bushel per acre increase this past year on a dent application of fungicide plus Revline late season and their foliar product as well. So we wouldn't normally expect to see this kind of yield increase, but it was definitely a high return on investment for late season application, and that goes to show how tough tar spot and some of the other diseases were on us this year. Next field, we have a fungicide only versus a meristem full treatment. What you're looking at on the pins and in between the red lines is the fungicide only is in this category and this category, and the purple is any corn that's below 250 bushel per acre. You can see there's more purple here. You can see there's more purple here. We're more consistent and more high yielding in the areas where the NKBS and Revline late season were applied. So when we did the yield check, I analyzed this section versus this section, and we came out to 268 versus 253. So a 15 bushel per acre yield advancement on a fungicide only versus the meristem program. Here we have a field of soybeans. This is actually that Cherokee field that I was talking about earlier. We have and they're going to talk about the program a little bit, but they have a post application, so a herbicide application timing that has some additional additives in it, and then they have a fungicide application time frame where they have 2 additional additives. And this is an untreated acre. This is the post application acre, and then this had the full program, which would be the post plus the fungicide time frame. It's kind of hard to pick out, but you can kind of blur your eyes just a little bit and see where the yield steps up. We have a sand knob in the middle of the field, which is less than, I don't know, I think I had that set less than 80 bushel per acre is where that was. So to do a yield analysis, it's not really fair to have that out in the field or have that big sand knob in the middle, but it definitely proved the fact that the yields got better once we were running the full program. This is the high yield field that I was talking about. I have a zoomed in photo on the next one, but basically up there in that red spot in the center is where the telephone poles got knocked out. What you're looking at is 90 feet untreated on the outsides of the entire field and the full program plus a double fungicide on the insides of the field. And that's kind of zoomed in to where I was talking about. So if you find the areas that don't have, this is where we were at in that picture. If you find the areas that were not applied, that don't have tree lines that are taken away from yield, the best guess that I could put on that number was 216 versus 276. And that's pretty close to where I have a couple different checks that don't have tree lines on them, and that's where the climate said that that high yield program was worth. So we're giving somewhere between 50 and 60 bushel an acre versus a complete naked check. This is a field in Hancock County, Illinois. So the story on this field is we had a fungicide application of Miravis, and the grower decided to come back and do a second fungicide application. So they chose a generic, cheaper option for their second fungicide, and they added NKBS to the program. And what you're looking at is 280 bushel on the left, 250 bushel on the right. The grower did tell me that it kind of skews a little bit. The field drops off just a little bit, but 30 probably isn't the right number, but closer to 20 bushel per acre by adding the NKBS, which is a foliar from Merschman on the right-hand side there. And what you're looking at is this is actually a split field of our conventional corn, our 2512C-0 and our 2413C-0, which is just showing that it picked up 29 to 30 bushel per acre. So we went from 270 to 299 and 229 to 258. That slide's a little busy, and we're probably not going to go through all of that results. If you want to see these results from our Fort Madison trial, this just goes to prove just a little bit. The yellow are all of our treated acres. Fungicide was huge this year. We had a 56 bushel yield advantage, a 48 bushel yield advantage, a 56 bushel yield advantage from an untreated acre to a fungicide treated acre. And then we have different meristem treatments and different FMC treatments, front versus back. So these are available. We talked about these on Cup of Joe probably 3 or 4 months ago. If you wanted to dive into some of those results, you can talk to me after, and I can definitely get you this trial work. But definitely showed that fungicide was a huge player this year, and a lot of the things that we do to protect our roots and stalks definitely helped us when it came to adding yield.